This is Unboxed by Aramex. It's a podcast series of compelling stories and cultural perspectives. This time, we're joined by someone who's built 3 leading B2B marketing technology companies, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. He's an author. His book, Employee Advocacy 101 Cheat Codes, is about how to start, scale, and drive results from employee advocacy programs. Bradley Keenan, it's good to have you here. Good to meet you.
Thanks for welcoming me to the podcast. It's awesome.
You're very welcome to be here. I've been looking forward to talking to you because I've kind of been stalking you and watching you on podcasts from
Scary, but okay.
Disseminate. I know. I don't want to creep you out in any way. There's no shortage of stuff to talk about, but I kind of want to talk about your latest venture, Disseminate, and really get to grips with that. But I'm intrigued by people that start companies, get them to a point where they want to move on, do something else. I wonder about energy. You are, I think, is it fair to say you're a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a bit cliche, but I probably am.
Yeah. So give us a potted history of where that mentality came from and to where you are now.
I guess all the way back from when I was a kid, I was always fascinated by friends of friends, like my parents' friends who ran their own businesses. And I just loved that idea that you didn't have to have a boss. And then the moment I went into the workforce and found myself not the ideal employee to have, I found that I was very difficult to manage by people. It kind of took somebody to say to me, I think you should just leave and go and run your own business. It's probably the best thing to do.
Why be so bad? Do you not take direction?
I think I'm probably better now, but I mean, in hindsight in 2020 and all that, I haven't worked for anyone for 20 plus years. So I could easily say I would be good at it, but certainly in my early 20s, I found it very difficult to take instruction from managers. I was always good at being on time and things like that. That wasn't the issue, but I would always look at wherever I worked and just think, this doesn't work properly. And I don't think that was right. I would change that. I would do that. And then I ended up working for a company called Laptop Shop, which was a friend of my dad's who had an e-commerce pure play retailer of laptops. Right. And I went to work for him to basically drive around the country selling laptop batteries to shops. And while I was in that business, there was an opportunity. There was a side business called Eyesight TV. And basically what they did, this is like pre-YouTube, was they started making product videos to for big manufacturers of TVs and things like that. So I said, let me be in this business with you, because I saw it as a way that I could be a director of a company, which I did, and that was quite successful. But I was only a minority shareholder, and that 5 years while we built the business up, while the business was successful, I just found myself more and more like I wasn't happy being a 10% shareholder. I wanted to own the whole thing, and that kind of was successful, but kind of ended badly. Very badly, actually. And then I went on to start my first actual business, which was e-tail.
Well, you say badly, but
it was bad.
But there's a smile behind the eyes there. I'm getting the impression that as much as it's bad, and I guess at the time it was difficult, but it was a lesson, wasn't it?
It was a lesson in how not to commit corporate espionage. Yeah.
Okay. How much more can you tell me?
I can tell you everything. I mean, I think time's passed now. So I was a 10% shareholder of the company, and basically I had started really kind of fantasizing about running my own business and owning it all. Right. And then I read this book called How to Get Rich by a guy called Felix Dennis, who owned Dennis Publishing. And I just got so into this book and so into him. Like the way he was putting across running a business. So I'd convinced myself that I had to just go off by myself and do it. And at the time I was 24. Right. I just had a baby, which is quite young to have a baby. I didn't have any money in savings. And basically just got to the point with it where I was so sick of hearing my own voice in telling people I was going to go run my business that I just did it. Okay. But the way I did it was it wasn't ideal, put it that way. So what I decided to do was Eyesight TV produced product videos, and then I decided I was going to create a company called e-tail. And e-tail, the E was electronic stories. Right. So I essentially stole one of their customers, started my new business, and this customer was going to be my lifeline to start the new business. So I'd registered it all, gone off and started the business, had a big fallout with the directors. And then this customer, which was is a decent amount of money, basically was my runway, had messed up on the contract. They'd signed it in the wrong place. So I said to them, you need to re-sign it and send it over to me. And they faxed it back to Eyesight TV.
Oh,
So Eyesight TV then got basically written evidence that I had stolen one of their customers while I was a director. So all of my shares in Eyesight TV, I had to sell them, and I had to sell them for £40. So I did 5 years' work. They were probably worth £1 million at the time.
£40 is at the moment it's about 200 dirhams for anybody watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've still got the check. I've got the £40 check, which is framed as on my wall. It was never cashed. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. And then basically, as part of that settlement, I'd signed an agreement to say that I wouldn't compete with them anymore. So I had this company called Electronic Stories, e-tail. My brother had also left that company to come and work for me. We didn't have any money. And I just signed a thing to say I wouldn't compete with them. So then I got into what we did in our original business, because I got offered a job to work for a company. And when I went to look at their customers and speak to their customers, it turned out their customers were really unhappy. So I decided to set up a competitor to the company that I went to have an interview for. And that was my first business, which was e-tail.
Wow. Tell me about e-tail. Tell me more detail about e-tail.
So e-tail is one of these businesses where I used to tell people what it was, and they just didn't even believe it was a business.
Okay.
So when you go on a website and there's a button that says where to buy,
Yeah.
that button says, you press it and it says, these are the retailers that sell this product. That's what e-tail was. We provided the engine that powered that specific button.
So it's very early affiliate marketing kind of
Yeah,
thing?
and part of it was affiliate marketing.
Right.
And at the time, we were getting paid from the manufacturer to use the technology, but we were also getting all of the affiliate money as well.
Okay.
So Samsung, for instance, anytime somebody bought a Samsung TV through that button, we would get a commission for our technology.
Right.
And that was e-tail. And we grew that business. It took 5 years, but we ended up selling it to a publicly listed company in the US, basically just after my 30th birthday.
Why did you sell it? Was it time? Because what always intrigues me about people like you is this ability to know, I don't know when to move on, or when it's done, or when the next idea comes up. What happened with e-tail?
I think the first business is always different. So like my business now, I'm not necessarily in a rush to sell it.
Right.
The first one was, it's just so stressful. Like the first time you do it, I had no idea what I was doing.
And you're young, you've got energy.
Yeah, like I look back on the 25-year-old version of me with admiration and just think what was he thinking?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how to do a VAT return, didn't know how VAT was calculated.
But isn't it good to not know any better?
Yes. The more you learn, the more you realize what can go wrong, the harder it is to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I went to come to sell it, it was like cash flow was always hard, because one of the things that both my businesses, I've never raised any money. I did everything with cash. Credit cards were originally how I started the business.
Right.
And then I've never had any venture capital funds, never borrowed any money, because it was 2009 when I started my first business. I don't know if you remember what happened in 2008.
I do.
There wasn't a lot of companies looking to lend a 25-year-old with no experience money to start a business.
You really didn't think this through,
No,
did
I
you?
really didn't. And it was a perfect time, actually, because there was there wasn't as many people competing, because people weren't stupid enough to start a business in 2009.
Everybody was hiding at that point.
Yeah.
Weren't they?
So during that 5-year period, you make mistakes through that. And I think specifically around company culture, my first business, the company culture was selfishly, it was all about me.
Right.
I just wanted to build a business and sell it and make money. That's all I wanted to do.
Okay.
So while I had employees that meant a lot to me, I didn't think about how we ran the business. I didn't think about what experience it was like for somebody to work inside my company. So we got 5 years into it. We got in a pretty decent financial position, had an opportunity to sell it. And then that time you're going from pretty much never having any cash to selling a business and having meaningful, life-changing money. And that's when I moved to Dubai a year before I sold that business.
Okay. So what happened? Why was it that you went from, okay, I need money, I'm going to build a business, I'm going to sell it, and this is for me, to, okay, I need to think about the people that this really affects, that work for me. What was the change?
I think what's really interesting, and I don't think people necessarily talk about it a lot, and there's a good reason why people don't talk about it. When you sell a business for the first time and you make money, it's quite a difficult thing to do, because you have such a life-changing event, but there aren't that many people that you know that have the same life-changing event. You go from being really busy to being not busy at all. Now, I was lucky. I lived in Dubai. I had two young kids, and I'd just been given a load of money. So I had a really good time.
That was fun.
The kids when they were younger thought Wild Waddy was like their local swimming pool. And we really enjoyed living here. But one of the things that was on reflection was when you look back at it and say, was I proud of that business? I was pleased with the result, but I wasn't proud of the technology we built. I didn't think I built a great business. And then lots of people were congratulating you and saying, oh, well done, you've achieved this thing. And I just didn't really feel like I could say to somebody, go and look at that business, and I did that.
Right.
So I wanted to do it again, knowing, almost like an artist, I guess, has a blank canvas, and go, well, what could I do if I had a blank canvas? I started Disseminate literally the day my earnout finished with Channel Advisor, when I finished there.
Okay.
And that was 2018. So
you weren't finished. I'm sort of gathering from you. There was some. I hate using this word fulfillment, because I always think it's a bit cheesy. But there's something there that there was a longing. I don't know. You weren't done, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to. What I found frustrating about working inside a public company. Basically, when they acquired the company, I was given like a VP role within a public company which was just a world away from what I was used to. So the way that I operated in the corporate world was completely different to how you would operate in a public company. And I found it frustrating that people would say to me that you couldn't build a business. You couldn't build a business without essentially allowing or accepting that people aren't that good at their jobs. And I kind of felt like I wanted to prove them wrong, and I wanted to create a business where everyone was like an A player. I could select who it was. I wouldn't raise funds, and I would do it again. But this time the product would be amazing. And that's basically what I wanted to do.
Okay. And is it easier this time?
No, it's not. So one of the things that another thing I've learned is, and I always use this analogy about kids, right? I've got two kids, two girls. You have one kid and you're like, I know how to parent. I've had one kid. My first kid operated totally different to my second one. Yeah. So then you have your second one, you think, oh, I'm a dad and I know how to do it. Like bribery and blackmail was pretty much my strategy with my first kid.
Really good with girls. That's my experience.
Yes. Yeah. But I have two girls, and the second girl, as soon as she was old enough to understand bribery and blackmail, she just wasn't interested. She was just like, yeah. So you realize, oh, actually, this kid's completely different to the first one, and this business is completely different to the first one. It's had more external problems that I've had to deal with. Cambridge Analytica scandal. We're in social media. That was a big thing.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's humbling, because you realize that you sell one business and you think you're a smart ass, and then you realize that you actually didn't know that much when you did it the first time, and you know even less now. So no, it's not easier.
I want to ask you about drive, because we were talking just before we started recording, Bradley, and I have a friend who's started businesses for years, and he's a person that has this incredible energy. He's a bit older than me. He's in his early 60s now, but he's got this energy that I think is unmatched in anybody I've ever seen, in that he can start something, he has the drive to get something going. But it seems like after 2 years, it's just, right, I'm done. I've got to move on to the next thing. And that's just the way, I guess, his brain works. But the drive is just unbelievable to me. What's your drive like now compared to when you were 24?
Yeah, just it's different. When I was mid-20s, like I wish I could bottle that drive up and sell it, because it was relentless, and there was zero logic involved in it. So in my mind, when I started my first business, like I said, I did it all on credit cards. So I did 100 grand on unsecured credit cards when I had a baby. Wow. Just bought my first house. And
you're just feet first, aren't you?
There was but my view in it then, which is so irresponsible. For the record on the podcast, I don't recommend that people take this view. Right. My view was that if I completely screwed it up, I was young enough to go bankrupt, and it would all be okay. So I was living in the UK, and the worst thing that's going to happen to you in the UK if you run up a load of debt is you're going to get bankrupt. Like, you're not going to go to prison. So my view was, I'm young enough I could make this mistake and do it again, and I would burn the furniture in my house before I decided to go back to working for someone. So it was only that drive that kept me doing it. As where now, if I did it, I would probably be too worried that I wouldn't be able to get some stuff on Deliveroo, or I wouldn't be able to have a Soho House membership. So I probably would lose the motivation a lot quicker. But yeah, in the 20s, it's very different.
Is it different now that you've got two girls as well? Sensible man, married, wife. Does that affect your decision making?
I mean, it's hard to say, probably, but not really. I always used to get annoyed with people because when you start a business, people will often come to you and ask for your advice, or say, should they start a business? And one of the mistakes I used to make was I used to tell everyone they should do it. And I saw a couple of people who I said to them, you should go and do it, go do it. And they failed miserably. And I really did feel a bit responsible that I projected onto them what they should do. Right. And then I also have had people who have said they want to start their own business, but they blame the fact they've got children and wife and responsibilities. But I also think that's really irresponsible, because if you want to do something, you should do it. You shouldn't blame your children that you didn't have the.
No, they're innocent bystanders, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's different now because my kids I don't take risks with like the money that we made the first time. So I don't really have to think about whether it would change their life or not.
Nice decision to be in, I guess. Can I ask you a little bit about Disseminate? I'm not in any way experienced in employee advocacy. I had to look up the term before I was talking to you today.
I did after I made the first version of the platform, to be honest.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. But it's essentially an employee influencer platform, isn't it?
Yes. That's
really what it is. So what's that?
Okay, so in a situation where you work inside an organization, so if we use an example like the easiest one to use is probably someone like McKinsey, right? Okay. McKinsey have thousands of consultants all over the world. They're a knowledge capital business. They need to show their clients that they're knowledgeable about their area of expertise.
Yeah.
But their corporate communications team and their marketing team don't want just McKinsey consultants just saying whatever. They want to control the narrative a little bit, but also help those that aren't as sophisticated on social with content that they can share. Okay. So our platform essentially centralizes content that's approved by an organization and gives an employee the ability that they can then share that easily and compliant. So a lot of our customers are pharmaceuticals companies and things like that, where it has to be compliant.
Okay, so it's a way of not to get employees to sing from the same hymn sheet, to use a phrase, but it's to make sure that the narrative is similar.
Yeah, I guess there's a spectrum for it. There's like at the top of the organization, you've got the CEO, super busy, but it's really important that they're active on social. So in that situation, the marketing team might help the CEO with the social, and that would be completely unique. But they may have 1,000 interns that they all want to be promoting company culture related content so they can attract more staff. So it's basically a social media platform, but the social channels are the employees.
So it's a tricky one for me because I look at social media maybe in a different way to my son. My son's 21, studying media at university, and his way of looking at it and using it, his language is completely different. Mm-hmm. How do you bring all of that together? Take a company like McKinsey with 60-year-old consultants and 25-year-old consultants. How do you kind of make that anything other than a melange of, weird language?
It's a good question. So we're the technology partner. We do a bit to help with that. Yeah. But ultimately, we provide a tool to a company to manage themselves. So they can structure different teams and groups, different languages. So they may say, for this group of people, this group of engineers, we're going to give them this message, sounds a certain way. And for these senior level executives, they're going to have a completely different message when they share the content.
Okay.
But we're giving the content in a framework for the employee to then edit themselves. So it's almost like gets them 80% of the way, and then they can fine tune it with their own personal language. In some cases where, like pharmaceuticals as an example, you're not allowed to change it because you can get in legal trouble for changing it.
All right. Two words that come to mind here: sincerity and authenticity. And I'm sort of fed up with hearing both of them, I'll be honest with you. But how do you encourage people to post positively about the place they work and to make it authentic and for them to be sincere? Because so much social media, and I don't want to be negative about social media because it's far too easy for someone of my generation to be negative, but so much of it is, I'm so blessed to work at this company. I'm so pleased to be here, and thank you to so and so. And I just think more often than not, I think you don't mean that. Click.
What's the most authentic thing you could write on LinkedIn in your mind?
In my mind, I've posted a couple of times, not very many times, but a friend of mine and posted about a job he was just about to get, and he was going on and on, and it was that I'm so blessed, and thank you to so and so, and all of this, and I just posted, wife's okay, kids are doing fine, thanks very much. I just don't have any interest in this kind of overly verbose, inauthentic statement making. That it gets to me, and that's just me. Maybe I'm just a grumpy old bloke, probably.
Potentially, could be both.
Potentially, yeah, and maybe I should own that. I don't know, but how do you do it so that how do you encourage people? How do you teach people to be sincere?
I think being sincere and being authentic are maybe slightly different for me. So the thing that I find interesting about LinkedIn is if you took 100 people who are on LinkedIn and they won the lottery,
right?
How many of them would be on LinkedIn the next week?
It's a very good point. I've never thought of that before. Yeah.
Majority of them probably wouldn't go back on LinkedIn, would they?
For sure.
They might be on Instagram or TikTok. They'll be in Dubai Marina.
They'd be on every other social media.
Exactly. Yeah. So LinkedIn's quite unique because if we think about it as a spectrum from highly personal to highly professional, highly personal is TikTok and Instagram. Sure. I'm posting pictures of the kids, whatever. LinkedIn is a business platform, right? We go to work because we want to earn money, we want to advance our careers, and we want to win clients. That's why people are on LinkedIn.
And to project an image, I guess.
Yeah, but for the purpose of, I want my net income to increase. That's generally the reason people are on LinkedIn. So it's authentic to post something about your company. If you work in sales, that's sharing a customer case study or something that's going to help you advance your career, because that's the purpose of the social network.
Okay.
So I personally see it when people write authentic content where they're talking about what they did at the weekend on LinkedIn as being maybe misplaced, because what's the point? I'm on LinkedIn because I'm growing my career. As where if they were posting about their company on Facebook and showing their Auntie Maggie their case study for their client, that would be really inauthentic because nobody in Facebook wants to hear it. So I think it's about the intention of why you're sharing the content. And then the authenticity and the sincerity just kind of comes from the language that you use and making it sound exactly like you.
That's an interesting point. So if you see people posting on what you think, the wrong message on the wrong network,
yes,
they probably are being inauthentic, being insincere.
Yes.
So I need to relax.
And it also is about the job role they do inside the company. So if you work in sales or you work in a senior level executive position, if you're sharing content which is about the company's financial results or case studies, then your personal objectives and your business objectives are completely aligned. So that to me makes total sense. If somebody in finance who's in accounts receivable is sharing something about a technological innovation that they've done in language that they don't even understand, that's completely inauthentic. Yeah. But providing someone with a framework that they can then edit themselves, I think can work.
Okay. What about the office loudmouth, the person who's always talking up their achievements or talking up their sales against the person who just is heads down, gets on with their job, does a really good job?
Yes.
How do you encourage those two to either temper what they're doing online or up what they're doing online? How do you kind of navigate that?
It's a difficult one because every company has those people. Sure. And I think the way that they interact with social just changes. So I oversimplify it when I explain it to clients in thinking about people as being like extroverted or introverted. It is an oversimplification. But if we think about the extrovert being somebody who wants to broadcast a message on LinkedIn as an example, that's fine. If you're more introverted, you're an engineer, you don't want to be shouting about the company's results, you can use our platform that enables them to interact with the other people's content. So it's more of a passive, we call it a boost, but like a like a comment on somebody else's content, and it's a way of supporting the message without being, you know, high fives and shouting from the rooftops.
Okay.
But what we find is, and this is one of the lessons I've learned with this business, and why in many ways it's more difficult, is the culture component is so important. Like, we have customers where they're really good brands. You'd think that they would have an amazing advocacy program, and they don't, because they have terrible culture. So their employees don't enjoy working there. So what can you do with that? You can give them the tool to become active ambassadors, but if they hate where they work, what's the probability that they're going to be happy going on LinkedIn talking about the company? As we have other customers who I've never heard of prior to them being customers in industries that I cannot understand no matter how much I try. And they have these amazing advocacy programs where everyone's talking about what they do, like marine science type companies, offshore drilling. And when I look into these companies, they've got 30,000 employees, and the employees love working there. But you've got other customers where you would think they have great cultures, but the proof is in the fact that their employees just say, no.
See, everybody talks about it. All companies talk about their company culture, and everybody talks it up, and it's also fantastic. And I guess most of the time it just isn't what it's cracked up to be.
I think the thing that I find really interesting is a lot of our customers sit either in marketing or talent acquisition. Right. And what I found really interesting in the last couple of years is when people made layoffs, where they made those layoffs. So like diversity, equity, and inclusion, really important until you're making layoffs. And then that's the first person who gets laid off. Mm-hmm. The talent acquisition team, which are all about broadcasting culture, oh no, we'll get rid of them first as well. So it's like, we only care about that when we're trying to encourage people to come and join us. We don't care about it when we're not trying to hire. Yeah. And I think that's when you can see the difference. So we see it. Yeah. And one of the things we look at, like we call it an ideal client profile. So when we go outbound to try and find customers, one of the things we look at is Glassdoor. So we'll look at a customer's Glassdoor review. And if the Glassdoor reviews are really low, that would be a big red flag for us of whether a customer is going to be successful.
Okay. Tell me about Glassdoor. Sorry.
So Glassdoor is where people go and review where they work.
Right.
It's sometimes quite fun to read through people's Glassdoor reviews. But essentially, if somebody has good Glassdoor reviews, then there's things like supports the CEO, believes in the CEO, those kind of things, and people can grade them. So think about it as like a Trustpilot, but for companies.
Okay.
And if somebody's Glassdoor reviews were really low, it wouldn't be a non-starter of how we would run an advocacy program, but it would be a conversation to have at the start.
So a website full of euphemisms, and you need an ability to read between the lines if you enter that wormhole.
Yes, basically.
Right, okay. One question I wanted to ask you was, how much should people post on social media, and particularly from an employment perspective? And I want to ask you about language, because I've often thought, how careful do you have to be? Can you swear on social media? Should you swear to emphasize a point? Because I don't believe in not swearing. I think swearing is emphasis. I don't think it's lack of vocabulary. Mm-hmm. If it's used, with the right intent.
Yes.
Should you swear on social media?
Yeah, I don't see why not. But I think that there's cultural things that you've just got to be aware of. Like, I swear quite a lot, and I try and swear less.
I do, and I try hard not to, but
but sometimes it's the way that there's the best way to describe something.
It's effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, I learned when I went to, like, a lot of our customers are in the US, and in my last business, I think most of our customers were in America. And I took for granted how British people generally aren't religious. Like, we are.
Yeah, probably.
But if you took 10 of your friends and said, how many of them will go to church? It would be like 0.1 of them in the UK. Probably. But then when I went to the US and I would talk to people, I picked up really quickly that there's certain things you can't talk about, like religion in the US, because it's so much more common for somebody to go to church on a Sunday in the US than it is in the UK. Same as if you work in the Middle East. So there's cultural things you have to be aware of. So sure. If my LinkedIn was just my friends and just people in the UK, I'd quite happily swear. But we have customers in the US that probably are much more conservative. So the downside for me, if I was talking in my actual voice on LinkedIn, swearing, would be that some customers would say, well, I don't like him because he swears.
Yeah.
As where I don't think I'm going to win customers because I swear.
Right.
So it's just a simple equation for me of going, I don't swear on LinkedIn because there's no upside.
Okay. And if you do, then use the @ sign and the exclamation point.
Yeah.
I suppose it's maybe the right way to do it. Oh, it's interesting because I see a lot of people using language that I think, I'm not sure if I would do that as much as I would do it in real life. So I'm back to this kind of how authentic am I being if I post something, if I don't use language that I would usually use. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's, like, if you could completely not care what people thought and you just posted your true authentic self, it would work. People would like it. But and I'm specifically talking about LinkedIn now, because there's that connection with where you work and your clients, there is a level of professionalism that I think that most people just wouldn't breach because it doesn't serve them to do it.
All of us have kind of not a work facade, but all of us have got like a work front, I think. The way we want to be perceived, the way we are, to a point. But it's never going to be the way we really are, is it? How do you, I don't know, how do you present yourself in a way that is truly the way you are, but in keeping with the professionalism that you need to portray? Again, I'm a bit garbled here, but I know I'm trying.
I do know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
So I think that the challenge with this, so like if you look at my LinkedIn, and how we post, and I don't mind saying this, like that's a collaborative effort. That's not me just getting my phone out and going, I'm going to post on LinkedIn.
Right.
My marketing team are heavily involved in that. They pick the themes that they're going to speak about. It matches up with other marketing activity we're going to do. And my marketing manager was one of our first employees. So he knows how to write how I speak.
Okay.
So he would add a certain element of sarcasm to something, and then it starts to sound a bit like me. And then I would tweak it. And, I don't like super happy clappy type things. Yeah. And that's taken a while to get that to a way that I'm okay with it. But there still is that element where if I go to a conference, I worry someone's going to come and speak to me, and we're going to speak at a bar and they're going to go, who the hell is that bloke? Because it's not the guy that was on LinkedIn. But I feel like it's close enough now that it is a fair representation of who I am. I approve all of the content, but I know people that post on LinkedIn, and I'm struggling not to swear here, but it's just not it's not them. Yeah. It's completely made up version of themselves, made up stories that never happened, because they lose sight of why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't mind, like we speak a lot about employee advocacy. Pretty much all I speak about on LinkedIn. I run an employee advocacy company and I want more customers. So to me, that's pretty straightforward.
So you should.
Yeah. But other people, they get caught up in the more people who interact with my content, the better I'm doing. But what they're talking about is nothing to do with their business. So they're talking about the thing they did at the weekend that they got inspired by, and that is a real life lesson. And so then it gets 400, 500 likes and they go, I'm doing well. But everyone in the audience is going, I have no idea what that person does for a job. Yeah. So I like the content, but I don't know what... he's not the first person I think of when I think about management consulting as an example.
Yeah, okay. So it's just for likes or for controversy, and some people just like to drop a bomb and back off and see, what comes back at them. Okay. One of the reasons we do this podcast, and one of the reasons that we're trying to talk to the people that we're trying to talk to, is to meet people that are doing something a little bit more unusual or doing things their own way, which is kind of a little bit like, Aramex back in the day. It was a risk to do that, and we're trying to talk to people about that. So what I want to do is kind of pick your brains for some of the wisdom that you've picked up, and I'm not going to ask you for inspiration.
Okay.
I want to be a little bit more direct. You've created 3 successful businesses. We've talked about that in some detail, but I want to talk about mistakes you've made and the learning that you've got from that. But I'm really more interested in the mistakes aside from eyesight. Mm-hmm. What's something that you've thought, I sort of cringe when I look back at that?
I've made so many.
That's good.
In what area would you like some of my mistakes? Because I can give you plenty.
What's the one that when you sit and think about it, the hairs on the back of your neck rise, the hackles go up, and not in that good way that it's like, oh, that's comforting. In that bad way, you think, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have made that step. You know, the ones that make you, I was going to say cringe again. I will say cringe again.
I mean, in e-tail, I made everything was a mistake pretty much. It was like failing. They say failing upwards. Is that what it is? Where you keep failing, but it still seems to work.
That's a good phrase.
I didn't appreciate in my last business, like I said earlier, the experience from the employee's perspective. I didn't appreciate, and that essentially hindered our growth. So even if I wanted to continue running that business, it was at the point where I wouldn't have been able to fix it because it was in the walls. You know, like there was no way of changing that. And that went all the way back down to the first person I employed, which was my original technical co-founder, and had a terrible relationship with him. I mean, for good reason. He was literally the most irritating person anyone's ever met.
In what way?
In every way.
Really?
In every way. He was horrendous.
Did he slurp his coffee? Everything he did was just...
Every single person who met that guy, right, hated him immediately. And he was pretty much like the original... He wrote the original code, and I didn't take the time to find a decent co-founder in the first business. So I was just like, he'll do. And then that was the foundations to build more mistakes on top of.
Right.
And that actually did get fixed in the end. He wasn't there when we exited the business. He exited the business a year and a half before I did.
Okay.
And I should have taken more of a long-term view when I started the business and find somebody that I did click with, which was good in Disseminate. Definitely, I learned from that. I was very fortunate. My co-founder in Disseminate is amazing. We've got a great relationship. And that was because I was in Dubai. If I wasn't in Dubai, I never would have met somebody in a bar that became a friend that then introduced me to another person. But yeah.
Relationships are so important, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I forget, and I'll sit at home. I tend to spend a lot of time by myself editing at home, and I get really involved in it because I love doing it. And then I think, oh, I need to get a life. I need to get out here and, go and talk to people a little bit more. But it is so key. The other thing I wanted to ask, and I hadn't asked this, what brought you here to Dubai?
So when we were about to sell e-tail, we were planning to sell e-tail, actually, I'm going to give you two versions of the story. I'm going to give you the version I tell everyone, and then I'll tell you the extra bit that I don't normally tell people.
Okay.
So we had M&A consultants come into the business, and the business was still relatively small. It was 25 people. So the M&A consultant said, if you want to sell this business, you need to prove that you don't run the business and it runs itself, because on day one, they're going to buy your business and you're not going to stick around for that long, and you need to prove that it runs itself. So the story I tell everyone is that then I decided that I wanted to take a year's break and spend time with the family, and I came to Dubai, and that was the story.
Okay.
But what actually happened was I came to Dubai to look at a property investment with a friend of mine at that point when the management consultants were giving me this advice, and I was in is it the Oceana? Is that on the Palm? And I was in this bar in the Palm, and I got talking to this guy, and he was like, yeah, I run a software business and run it from the UK. And I went, oh, that sounds nice sunshine. And he's like, because obviously it's tax-free here. And then I went, so how does that work then? And he was like, yeah, so I run the company from here and I'm a non-resident, so I don't pay tax. And we were making decent profit at the time, and I was starting to pay a lot of tax. And then it was just one of those moments where you put everything on the scale and you just go, I don't know why I'm not here. This makes no sense to me. And then I went home and then said to my wife, oh, we should go to Dubai. We should go and spend time there. And we moved because of the time of when that was. I had to get here for the financial year. So we basically packed up our whole life in like 6 weeks. And then we were here. And then I sold the business a year later.
Would you say, because a lot of what we talked about today kind of points in this direction, would you say you're impulsive?
Yeah. So this is a bit of a cliche, but I have ADHD and I'm medicated for it. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're naturally you're quite bubbly in thought. Let's put it that way.
More that I'm impatient. So if I think I want to do something, then I just go, well, let's
you just got to get on with
it. But I've learned patience, so I can be patient.
Okay.
But yeah.
You've made some money. Most people think money is success, I suppose, and in many ways, I mean, it is success. It's a sign of it. But what is success? What is success for you? What do you think?
I mean, the thing that I've got more surprised about myself as I've got older is the enjoyment that I've got from seeing other people do well. Certainly in my 20s, I wasn't thinking about what this could do for other people. It was just I had a goal and I wanted to do it. But seeing some of like our first employees, even in Disseminate, buy their first house, or like one of the guys that works for us, he was employee number 4. He started the company. He worked on the Cambridge punts. The punts.
Okay, yeah.
So he worked there. That was his job before he worked for us. And he's 6-figure salary earner now, VP level. And he's basically skipped probably 10 years in what he would if he had gone into a corporate environment working inside our business. So I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing people's life change because I created a business and because there's opportunities there. So that the perspective's definitely changed.
That's a jump from punts to Disseminate, isn't it? That's
yeah.
Punting, I always think is a very calm, relaxing.
Yeah.
The tourists are on the boat with you.
But I think because I didn't know what I was doing when I started my first business, I don't mind hiring people without experience if they're the right type of person. So I think every employee in Disseminate I've done the final interview for still. Right.
Still now, 6.
Yeah. So we try and look for like a certain, we call it, it's a bit cheesy, and I think I'm the only one who actually says this, but it's like our Disseminate DNA. And there's like a certain type of person that if we get them, they just stick in the business and they're great. Like we don't have politics, we don't have big egos or things like that in the organization, and it just works really well. So I get enjoyment from that. And I think the money thing is when you first do it, it's obviously really important.
Yeah.
And I think being in Dubai was really interesting to this because there's so much money here that it's actually humbling. And I think in many ways Dubai taught me what I didn't want to be. It might sound a bit bad, but seeing how grotesque some people are because they have money, I think it showed me how I didn't want to be like that.
Well, you don't have to be like that.
No, you don't.
No. It's a conscious decision, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I could go. I've got loads of questions, but I'm gonna wrap this up because otherwise we'll be here all day. So the final question, and this is really the question we're asking everybody, is what would you like to see happen or change or affect most in the world? What would you most like to unbox, and why would you like to do it?
Okay, I'll keep this relatively close to my area of expertise. There's probably things I would rather fix than this, but we'll keep it relevant.
Aside from world peace,
okay,
all that stuff. Yeah.
So I think I find it frustrating seeing my children my youngest she's 14 and my oldest is 17. Okay. And one of the things I find fascinating about kids is when we ask them what they want to be when they grow up, which is such a dumb question. And I think it sets them on a pathway that can really screw people's lives up and have meaningful impact. Mm-hmm. Because when you ask a 5-year-old what do you want to be when you grow up, they're picking from the selection of books that have been read to them, whether it's a policeman, a farmer, a fireman. They have no idea what those jobs are. Mm-hmm. And then they form an identity around, I want to do a job, having no knowledge about what that job's going to be like. And before you know it, you're in university doing a doctor's medical degree, and you don't actually know what it's like to be a doctor. So I feel like when I was younger, nobody said there's this pathway, which is being in sales. Like sales was my thing. Nobody said, you could go and work in a million different companies in sales because your personality type and the way you want to run your life is more suited to this. And I see it in my children. There's parents saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they kind of have an answer to give them. But I'm a bit like, do you actually want to do that? Or is that just the thing you've attached yourself to? So I think I would like to see that question go away completely and just let people go and find out in the world what they enjoy doing and what they would actually get enjoyment from.
That's a great answer. I love that. This time on Unboxed, Bradley Keenan. He's the founder and CEO of Disseminate, and it's a business he's built from the ground up, I think. Bradley, thank you very much for coming in. Really, really enjoyed talking to you.
It's been a pleasure.